Ultralight examination. Question 1. This is the first one. Day in Canada is defined as the period of time between the beginning of morning civil twilight and the end of evening civil twilight. Next question. Following the use of alcohol or drugs, no person shall act as a flight crew member if their ability is impaired. A pilot on a VFR flight within controlled airspace must remain clear of cloud by at least 500 feet vertically and 1 mile horizontally. A propeller that is balanced prevents strong vibrations. A single-engine aircraft operating beyond gliding distance from shore or taking off from or landing on water shall have on board 1 life jacket per person. Accelerating in an easterly direction, you would see the magnetic compass indicate a turn towards the north. Advection fog forms when moist air moves from a warm surface to a colder surface. After accepting a clearance and subsequently finding that it cannot be complied with, a pilot should take any immediate action required and advise ATC as soon as possible. An aircraft should be properly grounded when refueling to prevent static discharge. An ultralight aeroplane and a glider are both approaching to land. The glider has the right of way because it has less ability to maneuver. An ultralight aeroplane flying in a strong headwind on approach suddenly encounters a no-wind condition near the ground. The immediate effect of this wind shear will be an increased rate of sink. An ultralight aeroplane may be operated within a control zone when the ATC is not operating, if permission has been received from the airport operator. Any person holding a license, permit, or certificate issued under the authority of CARS shall produce such document for inspection upon demand by a peace officer or immigration official. Applicants for the pilot permit ultralight aeroplane shall be at least 16 years old. At the request of the pilot, the VHF direction finding stations normally provide a homing service on a pre-selected tower or FSS frequency. A stall from a coordinated climbing turn to the left, the blank wing will stall first and the aircraft will roll to the blank. Right. On a climbing turn, the outside wing, it stalls first. On a descending turn, the inside wing stalls first. Average fuel consumption is 5 gallons per hour. The total flying time is 30 minutes. Using 2 gallons for the taxi, takeoff, and climb, what is the required fuel for the trip? 5 gallons per hour divided by 2 is 2.5, plus 2 is 4.5 gallons. Plus, if you were to calculate in the 30-minute extra fuel, that would be another 2.5, which would bring you up to 7, sadly. However, in the case of this question, they don't include that, so it's 4.5. The basic ultralight aeroplane shall be flown clear of designated airways, clear of terminal control areas, with all occupants wearing helmets. Designated airspace of defined dimensions surrounding an operating control tower at an airport is known as a control zone. Effective collision avoidance scanning technique requires a series of regularly spaced eye movements, focusing for at least 1 second on each block area. Except for the purpose of taking off or landing, an aircraft shall not be flown over an aerodrome at a height less than 2,000 feet AGL, because it's an aerodrome, so it's 2,000 feet. Explosives or other dangerous articles shall not be carried on board any aircraft unless in compliance with the Transportation of Dangerous Goods Act. Failure to adjust the altimeter when flying from an area of low pressure to an area of high pressure will result in the aircraft indicated altitude reading lower than the actual altitude. High to low, look out below. Low to high, way too high. Flying with a cold can cause sinus pain during descent. If a flight itinerary contains a search and rescue, SAR action initiation time, pilots shall report their arrival to the responsible person not later than the SAR initiation time specified in the flight itinerary. If a heading of 250 degrees magnetic maintains your outbound track of 242 magnetic, then the heading most likely for your reciprocal track for your return would be 54 degrees magnetic, because we got 250 minus 242, which is 8 degrees from the right. The opposite track would be 242 minus 180, which is 62 magnetic. When applying the 8 degrees to the left, we get 62 minus 8, which gives us 54. If a strong crosswind from your left is present during takeoff, you should leave the ground at a higher than normal speed. If an aircraft accident occurs, the pilot or operator of that aircraft shall ensure that it is reported to the TSB as soon as possible thereafter, using the quickest means of communication. If ice has accumulated on an aerofoil in flight, the stalling speed will increase in all flight conditions. If the aircraft's heading is 270 when ATC states traffic 9 o'clock 5 miles eastbound, the traffic would be 90 degrees to the left at an unknown altitude. If the elevator trim control is set to full nose up, the trim tab on the elevator should be full down. If the wing of a trike has more than one hang point and a change is made from aft to forward hang point, the trim speed will increase. If there is rain falling on your windshield during an approach, the terrain contours will appear, the answer is, lower than they actually are to you. If you experience an engine failure immediately after takeoff, land straight ahead. In which case should the smoothest flight be expected? Under an overcast of stratus cloud. No person shall fly or attempt to fly as a flight crew member of an aircraft if that person is aware of being under any physical disability that might render that person unable to meet the requirements for the issue or renewal of their license or permit. 1 minute of latitude is equal to 1 nautical mile. One of the factors that may lead to wheelbarrowing on landing is excessive speed on approach in a full flap configuration. At controlled airports, the taxiway markings in the picture below indicate that the aircraft must stop before crossing from the solid line side unless otherwise cleared by the ATC. A tricycle gear ultralight aircraft is taxiing in a wind from 8 o'clock direction at 15 knots. The recommended position for the left aileron is down. The turn coordinator below indicates that the aircraft is in a skidding right turn. It's skidding because the ball is on the outside of the turn. If it was on the inside of the turn, it would be slipping. Refer to the Canadian Flight Supplement found in Appendix Lindsay, Ontario, NF4. Select the correct statements regarding the aerodrome information. Circuits are right hand on runway 13 and 20. Aircraft radio controlled aerodrome lighting is available. Both of those are true. C, there are PAPI lights on both runways 31 and 13. That's false. D, there are custom services available. True. E, control zone extends for 7 nautical miles. False. F, there is an FSS at the aerodrome. False. G, aviation gasoline is available. True. So the answer is B, AB, DG. Refer to the Toronto VNC for this question. The dashed circle around Peterborough represents a control zone. Refer to the Toronto VNC. The highest obstacle within 5 nautical miles either side of your track from Lindsay to Norwood is 1,600 feet ASL. Refer to the Toronto VNC. The hyposmetric tinting on the chart indicates that between Lindsay and Norwood airports, the flight will be conducted over a ground elevation between sea level and 1,000 feet. Refer to the Toronto VNC. The large bold number 18 southeast of Peterborough represents the maximum elevation figure for the given quadrant. Relative humidity is the amount of moisture present in the air compared to the amount the air could hold at that temperature and pressure. The amount of water vapor that a given volume of air can contain is governed by its temperature. The CARS stipulate that blank must be worn by pilots when operating basic ultralight airplanes. Helmets. The daytime closed markings for any part of a maneuvering area of an airport is white or yellow X. The exhaust gas temperature gauge gives you a direct indication of the air-fuel mixture setting. The forecast surface wind will be included in a GFA if it has sustained speed of at least 20 knots. The most important feature affecting directional stability is the fin and rudder. The movement of an aircraft about the longitudinal axis is known as the roll. The part of the frontal system along which cold air is retreating is called a warm front. The rule that maximum gross weight shall not be exceeded and the CG shall remain within the permissible range for every flight is applicable to all aircraft. The standard empty weight of an aircraft includes the unusable fuel and oil. The viscosity of the oil to be used in an aircraft engine is specified by the manufacturer and can be identified by the SAE number. Thunder and lightning are associated with cumulonimbus clouds. Turbulence near the ground due to the surface heating will usually be most severe during the early afternoon. 2 advanced ultralight airplanes have fixed-pitch propellers. Propeller on A has a fine, high RPM pitch compared to propeller B, which has a coarse, low RPM. Ultralight aeroplane A will have a better takeoff and climb performance, but poor cruise performance. Ultralight aircraft behind heavier aircraft on final approach should remain above the approach path of the heavier aircraft. Unless otherwise specified, all turns in the circuit at the aerodrome shall be made to the left. Unlike the 2-stroke engine, the 4-stroke engine is more tolerant of problems as they develop. What are the strokes of the 4-stroke engine called? Intake, compression, power, exhaust. What determines the angle of attack at which a particular aeroplane stalls? What should a pilot broadcast to indicate serious or imminent danger and to request immediate assistance? Mayday, mayday, mayday. Did I give the answer for the previous question? What determines the angle of attack at which a particular airplane stalls? The design of the wing. When a parked aircraft's altimeter is set to the local setting, it would indicate the airport altitude above sea level. When an aircraft engine is left running on the ground and no person remains on board, the aircraft's movement must be restricted. It must not be left unattended. When an ultralight aeroplane is used to tow an object, it must be equipped with a tow hook and a release control system. When confronted with a thunderstorm, takeoff or landing should be avoided as a sudden wind shift or low-level turbulence could cause loss of control. When a steady rain is encountered in flight, it can cause low stratus or fog to form below the aircraft. When turning from downwind to into wind at low altitude, a pilot may experience an illusion of skidding and decreasing airspeed. When 2 aircraft are approaching head-on, or approximately so, there is danger of collision. Each pilot shall alter the heading to the right. Which cloud type indicates the presence of significant vertical currents at low levels? Cumulus. Which instrument will not work properly if the pitot pressure source and its drain vents become blocked? The airspeed indicator. With the operation of ultralight aeroplanes in active Class F airspace, identified as CYA, participating and non-participating pilots are equally responsible for collision avoidance. With the passage of a cold front, the surface wind will usually veer and increase in speed. Veer means clockwise. You observe another ultralight aeroplane on the horizon ahead. A collision could occur if it appears to remain stationary and increase in size. That completes the ultralight examination practice test. Here are the answers for the ultralight practice examination 1. A control zone is a controlled airspace around an airport that extends upward, vertically from the surface to 3,000 AGL. No person shall walk, drive, or park a vehicle on any part of an uncontrolled aerodrome used for the movement of aircraft except in accordance with permission given by the operator of the aerodrome. When two aircraft are converging at approximately the same altitude, the aircraft that has the other on its right shall give way, excepting that power-driven, heavier-than-air aircraft shall give way to airships, gliders, and balloons. When two aircraft are approaching head-on or approximately so, and there is a danger of collision, each pilot should alter their heading to the right. Unless taking off, landing, or attempting to land, no person shall fly over a built-up area unless the aeroplane is operated at an altitude from which, in the event of an emergency necessitating an immediate landing, it would be possible to land the aeroplane without creating a hazard to persons or property on the surface, and in any case at an altitude that is not lower than 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle within a radius of 2,000 feet. The amount of fuel and oil carried on board any aeroplane except an ultralight at the commencement of any day VFR flight shall be sufficient. Anticipate wind and other weather conditions having been considered to fly to the destination and thereafter for 30 minutes at normal cruising speed. The signal to an aircraft in flight, which means give way to other aircraft and continue circling, is a steady red light. The propeller converts blank of the crankshaft into blank. The propeller converts torque of the crankshaft into thrust. The minimum visibility for VFR in a control area extension is 3 miles. Pilots of an aircraft are responsible for taking any action as necessary to avoid a collision at all times. When in VFR flight with an altimeter within an altimeter setting region, the altimeter should be set to the current altimeter setting of the nearest station along the route of flight. Runways at Canadian airports and aerodromes in the southern domestic airspace are numbered to indicate the nearest even 10 degrees, the runway bearing in degrees, magnetic. Unless otherwise authorized, a pilot on VFR flight operating within Class C TCA must receive clearance from the appropriate ATC unit. The east end of a runway orientated east-west is numbered 27. If the heading of 250 maintains your outbound track of 242, the required heading to maintain the reciprocal track back to your departure point would be 54 magnetic. We went through that last time, or on the previous test. We're going to skip question 16 because I believe the answers are the same as the previous test as well. VNC are updated every D. They are updated as required. Refer to the Winnipeg VNC for the following navigation question. What is the magnetic track from St. Andrews to Arborg? D. 342. The true track is 348, and the magnetic variation is 6 degrees east. So you must subtract the magnetic variation from the true track in order to get the magnetic track. Therefore, magnetic track is 342. Refer to the Winnipeg VNC for the following navigation question. Wind is 250, true, and 20 knots. True airspeed is 105 knots. Using the above information, the magnetic heading and ground speed en route to St. Andrews and Arborg is nearest to. You will need a E6B or electronic flight computer to calculate the true heading. But the answer is 331 magnetic and 106 knots. Referring to Winnipeg VNC for the following navigation question, en route to St. Andrews to Arborg, you pass by CYA 420T. You must be more alert for civilian flight training activity. During a long cross-country flight, you need to divert to an airport that is long distance away. The proper course of action is to break up the diversion into shorter, more manageable legs. Refer to the Winnipeg VNC for the following navigation question. Average fuel consumption is 5.5 gallons per hour. Total flight time 1 hour 15 minutes. Note, add 2 gallons for taxi takeoff and climb at St. Andrews and 2 gallons for taxi takeoff and climb at Arborg. Using the above information, calculate the day VFR fuel requirements for the flight from St. Andrews to London with a stop at Arborg. So you need to calculate the fuel required for the trip of 1 hour 50 minutes. So that's 5.5. You will need, at 5.5 gallons, you will require 10.1 gallons of fuel. The question states that you will need 2 gallons for each taxi takeoff. That's 4. VFR requirements for daytime state that you need an extra 30 minutes of fuel at cruise power. This means you will require 2.8 gallons. So the total fuel required is 16.9. This practice exam is obviously not for just ultralights. Otherwise, it wouldn't require the extra 30 minutes of fuel. Question 23. Given pressure altitude is 5,500 feet, outside air temperature is 15 degrees Celsius, the indicated airspeed is 100 knots. Assuming the indicated airspeed is equal to calibrated airspeed, and true airspeed, the true airspeed would be closest to. You will need a flight calculator to do this. 110 knots. Refer to the Winnipeg VNC for the following navigation question. The highest obstacle within 5 nautical miles either side of your track from St. Andrews to Arborg is 1,255 feet ASL. Refer to the Winnipeg VNC for this navigation question. While on track, a beam Fraser wood, maybe that's supposed to be above Fraser wood, you wish to obtain the latest weather for Winnipeg to get some indication of what conditions will be at London. What would be the most appropriate station and frequency to call for this information? The answer is Winnipeg Radio 126.7 megahertz. Your aircraft crosses the highway running east-west into the town of Kamanon at 1810 Zulu. At 1816 Zulu, your aircraft is over the town of Fraserwood. Your ETA at London Airport without stopping at Arborg will be closest to 1852 Zulu. Refer to the Winnipeg VNC for this navigation question. You note your position north of track over the town of Meleb. Using the opening and closing angle methods, you would alter the heading to the left 8 degrees. You add the two angles together. Referring to the Winnipeg VNC for this navigation question, what class of airspace would you be flying through when your aircraft is at 5500 ASL over Malaton? Be flying in E-class airspace. Sorry, you'd be flying in G-class airspace because you're below the E-class. With the VOR receiver tuned to Winnipeg VOR, when you are over the town of Malaton, the CDI should be Winnipeg VNC, but the CDI should be centered with the from indication when the OBS is 355. Refer to the Winnipeg VNC for this navigation question. Due to poor weather, you decide to divert back to St. Andrews, but the weather is below VFR minimums. What could you do? Request special VFR. Where a VFR flight plan has been filed and no search and rescue time has been specified in the flight plan, the pilot in command shall report the arrival to the appropriate ATS unit not later than 1 hour after the last reported ETA. Refer to the Winnipeg VNC for this navigation question. What class of airspace is CYR 409 located 4 nautical miles northwest of St. Andrews Airport? All CYA and CYR airspaces are Class F. The reported ceiling is 1,000 feet broken and visibility is 4 miles. To remain VFR, an aircraft cleared to the circuit must join at 500 feet below the cloud base. Relative humidity is the amount of moisture present in the air compared to the amount of the air could hold at that temperature and pressure. The cloud type usually associated with steady rain is nimbostratus. Clouds form when moist air overruns cold air because the warm air cools as a result of expansion as it rises. Advection fog forms when moist air moves from a warm surface to a colder surface. During a descent from 2,000 feet AGL to the surface, you will usually find that the wind backs and decreases. Backs means that it goes counterclockwise. An aeroplane flying an approach into a strong headwind encounters a sudden tailwind near the ground. The wind shear hazard is to be expected is a sudden decrease in airspeed and a loss in lift. Conditions required for the formation of thunderstorms are unstable air, high humidity, and a lifting force. A condition wherein the temperature aloft is higher than that of the lower atmosphere is generally referred to as an inversion. Air masses which are being cooled from below are characterized by fog, poor visibility, and a layer of cloud. A front is a narrow transition zone between two air masses. During the passage of a cold front, Warm air is lifted as colder air pushes underneath it. Radiation fog forms as a result of the ground becoming cold at night and cooling the air in contact with it. The following sequence of clouds observed at an airport, cirrus, altostratus, nimbostratus, the observer should expect the passage of a warm front. Cloud heights in Canadian Aerodrome forecasts, TAF, are given in feet AGL. Given pressure altitude 4,500 feet, temperature 20 degrees, the density altitude will be nearest to 6,100 feet. You need a flight computer to determine the answer to this question. Failure to adjust the altimeter when flying from an area of low pressure to an area of high pressure will result in the aircraft indicated altitude reading. Remember, high to low, look out below, low to high, way higher than actual. So, in this case, we're going low to high, so the answer is the altitude will be lower. The altitude reading will be lower than the actual altitude. Refer to the following FD. The average wind applicable to a direct flight from Winnipeg to Brandon at 5,500 feet would be, the answer is 290 true and 30 knots. The reason it's true is because it's taken from a METAR at the actual site. The forecast surface wind will be included in the GFA if it has a sustained speed of at least 20 knots. Refer to the weather synopsis number 100 GFA 18Z and GFA 00Z. The center of low pressure system is blank between 1800 Zulu and 0 Zulu. The answer is moving southeasterly. The GFA forecast valid for the period of blank and includes an additional blank IFR outlook. The forecast is 12 hours and it includes an additional 12-hour IFR outlook. Refer to the weather synopsis 100 TAF. The cloud cover at Churchill CYYQ is forecast to thicken and lower. Refer to weather synopsis 100 TAF. The forecast visibility at Churchill between 1500 Zulu and 2100 Zulu is greater than 6 statute miles. P6 SM. Refer to weather synopsis number 100 TAF. The Gillam Aerodrome forecast covers a period of 10 hours. Refer to the weather synopsis at pound 100 TAF. The Gillam 1800 Zulu wind forecast is forecast to be 260 true at 10 knots. Refer to the weather synopsis 100 METAR TAF. The 1500 Zulu Portage La Prairie METAR indicates that winds are lower than forecast. Refer to weather synopsis 100 METAR reported ceiling at CYBR at 1500 Zulu is 10,000 feet AGL. Refer to the weather synopsis number 100 METAR. The 1500 Zulu temperature and dew point spread at CYPG is 4 degrees Celsius. Refer to the weather synopsis, number 100 meter. The altimeter setting at CYWG is 30.43 inches of mercury. The primary reason for developing proficiency in slow flight is to recognize the symptoms indicating the approach of a stall. The maneuvering speed for an aeroplane is the maximum speed at which full travel of flight controls may be used without exceeding the design load factor. The use of low-octane fuel in a high-compression engine may result in detonation. The indicated stalling speed of an airplane does not change with altitude. The stalling speed of an aeroplane is greater in a coordinated turn than in a straight and level flight. Ground effect will enable an aeroplane to become airborne below normal flying speed, primarily due to a decrease in induced drag. The correct height above the sea level is indicated on a pressure altimeter set to 29.92 inches of mercury only when the standard conditions or the conditions of standard atmosphere exist. An altimeter setting is 29.7 inches of mercury. If a pilot inadvertently sets it to 30.7 inches of mercury on the altimeter subscale, the altimeter will read 1,000 feet too high. A major early symptom of hypoxia is euphoria, an increasing sense of well-being. The tendency of the human eye to focus on a point 3 to 5 feet away due to a lack of stimulation is called empty field myopia. The effects of one drink of alcohol at sea level will increase with an increase in altitude. During an approach to land on an upsloping runway, the pilot may experience the illusion that the aeroplane is higher than it actually is. When turning from downwind to into wind at low altitude, a pilot may experience the illusion of skidding and decreasing airspeed. Wheelbarrowing on landing may result from a high approach speed. Deceleration errors in the magnetic compass would be most pronounced on headings of east and west. Given Aerodrome elevation 4600 ASL, altimeter setting is 29.52 inches of mercury, the pressure altitude would be 5,000 feet. Because 29.92 minus 29.52 equals 0.4 times 1,000 is 400 feet, so we need to add, because it's a positive number, add 400 to 4,600, which is 5,000 feet. Refer to the crosswind graph. For taking off on runway 31 at Lindsay with the wind from 270 magnetic at 20 knots, the aircraft would be subject to a headwind and crosswind components irrespectively of 15 and 13. Refer to the loading graph center of gravity moment envelope. I'll read it anyway. Given loads, basic empty weight includes full oil, unusable fuel, 1,365 pounds at 36 inches. Usable fuel at takeoff is 38 gallons. The pilot and front passenger, 360 pounds. 2 rear passenger seats, 282, and baggage of 50 pounds. The aeroplane, the answer is within both the weight and the CG limits. The wake turbulence caused by a departing aeroplane is most severe immediately following takeoff. And that, my friends, is the completion of practice examination 1.